Accepting the Peabody Award is Alan M. Cohn, investigative reporter for WTNH-TV in New Haven.
When the Navy inspected other Sikorsky-built Seahawks, it discovered 41 other suspect blades.
The obvious question is, how did 41 tail rotor blades with some kind of defect make it onto aircraft that are flying?
On this particular case, we're not happy that they got out there.
Ted, we're going to begin with a quote from Senator Christopher Dodd from this week. No one wants to say this stuff, but the fact is, these are ripe, easy targets. Now, if you ride Metro North on a regular basis, what you're about to see will not be surprising. But considering the number of warnings we've gotten about the need to beef up rail security, it is shocking. So, how do you make our commuter rail system safe and secure? There are some 35 train stations around Connecticut, hundreds if not thousands of miles of track, and no one believes you can make train stations as secure as airports.
Good evening, I'm Ann Nyberg.
And I'm Alan Cohn in for Tick Copy. It may be sunny outside right now, but a nor'easter is heading our way, something you typically don't see in April.
Ted, Sikorsky's vice president for quality tells Teammate the company is being very aggressive at trying to track down defective parts. But as you're about to see, one recent scary incident underscores the problem and the concern. This internal Sikorsky document from earlier this month describes a harrowing incident on board a U.S. Navy Seahawk flying cross-country. The aircraft, according to the document, experienced an unusual vibration. Upon landing, they found a piece of the tail rotor had fallen off. A Navy Flight Safety Board determined the tail rotor blade had a manufacturing defect. How serious was the incident? We asked Sikorsky.
So if it failed, there would be big problems.
Well, a total failure of any flight-critical part would be an issue, absolutely.
In fact, a top aerospace expert tells us the crew was, quote, very lucky to get back. And when the Navy inspected other Sikorsky-built Seahawks, it discovered 41 other suspect blades.
The obvious question is, how did 41 tail rotor blades with some kind of defect make it onto aircraft that are flying?
On this particular case, we're not happy that they got out there. This is an ongoing investigation right now.
But it's not an isolated incident. Also this month, the Army issued a warning after discovering the walls were too thin on main gearbox housings on Black Hawk helicopters.
Tail rotor blades, main gearbox housings. We're talking about the most critical kinds of flight safety parts on helicopters. And the top aerospace manufacturing engineer tells us the fact that these defects were not caught by Sikorsky's supplier or the company is both sloppy and embarrassing. We began investigating reports of quality control problems at Sikorsky 3 years ago, and we continue to receive reports those problems persist. And for the first time, Sikorsky is willing to sit down and talk to us about it on camera. George Klug is Sikorsky's vice president for quality.
Well, no manufacturing system is perfect. We strive for perfection here. We don't always reach it. And getting people to identify the issues so that we can address them is what we're about here.
But sources inside Sikorsky point out the company has reduced the number of its quality inspectors at its Stratford plant from 70 down to 8. The company says it is simply relying on its suppliers to perform quality inspection.
We've also added some inspectors at the supply base. It's actually more effective to take those resources and put them where the parts are made than check them on their way in the factory here.
But according to these internal company documents, since 2004, quality problems at Sikorsky have gone up by 8-fold.
It sounds like a recipe for disaster.
Nick Swellenbeck is an investigator at the Project on Government Oversight in Washington. He echoes other experts, stating the company's apparent inability to fix its quality control problems may be endangering U.S. troops.
Obviously, Sikorsky hasn't prioritized the safety of America's soldiers who are flying in these helicopters, who depend on every single part of a highly complicated flying machine to work properly under stressful conditions.
Our safety record's better than ever. So from an end standpoint, the aircraft's performing magnificently in the toughest environment in the world.
Sikorsky says it doesn't believe the defective edge on its tail rotor blades is what caused part of the tail rotor to fall off that Navy aircraft in flight. As for what impact the company's quality problems have had on business, that is hard to say. While the Pentagon is ordering new Blackhawks to replace those being worn out in Iraq, in the recent past, Sikorsky has lost the contract to build the new Marine One, the Comanche, and in the last month, it lost a $15 billion Air Force contract to Boeing to replace the Sikorsky-built Pave-Hawk helicopter. Ted, back to you.
It was a dangerous job in a dangerous place, guarding a checkpoint from this bunker in Baghdad's Green Zone. But it wasn't insurgents Private Ryan Riddle had to worry about on a hot summer night 2 years ago. It was a bullet from an M16 carried by one of his own comrades.
It felt like someone took a sledgehammer to my thigh, and I couldn't even stand. I had to be walked up to my vehicle, and when I put my leg up, the bleeding just started and it wouldn't even stop.
It was an accidental shooting which left very real scars from shrapnel wounds to Riddle's wrist and legs. Doctors were unable to remove part of the bullet in his leg because it was too close to an artery. Riddle received a commendation for his service at the checkpoint. The soldier who shot him got a reprimand. But when Riddle was discharged, moved home to Southington, and filed for service-related benefits for the gunshot wound, doctors at Newington's VA hospital told him,
"There's no proof of it. We don't know if you got it on the streets of Hartford or in Iraq."
That's right. Despite x-rays that clearly show a bullet still lodged in Riddle's thigh, the VA denied his claim, saying service records do not document a gunshot wound to the left thigh during service. Somehow, Riddle's service records got lost.
What did you say?
I was taken aback. I didn't know what to say. When I thought that I served my country and fought a war, that I would at least be taken care of after I was done. But it's just the system.
Both the VA and Defense Department wouldn't help, so we did. First, tracking down the family of Riddle's sergeant still in Iraq. We got an email address, contacted Sergeant Dirk Humphreys, and got this detailed account of what happened. We also obtained a second letter from another soldier who was there. But as we were collecting evidence backing up Riddle's story, the VA denied his appeal again, saying it still could not find evidence he was shot in Iraq.
So News Channel 8 has come to Washington to confront the Veterans Administration. How come we were able to track down comrades of Ryan Riddle who were with him when he was wounded in Baghdad, and the VA hasn't?
The VA declined our request for an interview, so we showed up at a Senate Veterans Affairs Committee hearing and waited for Ronald Ahmet, the VA's Undersecretary for Benefits.
The question is, how could a TV station from Connecticut reach out to people in Baghdad and confirm that this private was shot and the VA can't?
Frankly, I don't know the facts you're speaking of. I'll be happy to look into it.
Mary Ellen McCarthy is with the Senate Veterans Affairs Committee and says by law the VA is required to help research claims. But in reality, she says, sometimes it's next to impossible because the VA can't access the Defense Department's computer system to search service records.
Why is this happening? I mean, this is nothing new.
Because people are more interested in instruments of war than they are in providing a paper trail for a disabled veteran. And until that changes, I think we're going to continue to see some problems in this area.
This is the email from Sergeant Humphreys.
In the case of Ryan Riddle, we provided the evidence of the gunshot wound the VA wasn't able to get on its own.
I can assure you we'll look into it promptly on that, and we're going to do the right thing by every veteran that comes to us.
That was almost a month ago, but the VA is still trying to confirm the information that took us only a few days to get. In the meantime, as we mentioned, a $33,000 bonus for Ronald Ahmet, the man you just saw, who manages the disability claims system that has a backlog of cases and delays averaging 177 days getting benefits to injured veterans like Ryan Riddle.
It's a cold February morning. Like they do every day, thousands of Connecticut commuters are riding Metro North's New Haven line to New York's Grand Central Terminal. And we're riding along with them to illustrate what has people like Stamford Mayor Dan Malloy so concerned about security or the lack of it
on commuter trains.
A lot of people are getting on with luggage, putting it on, checking it for an hour or 2 hours. There's no connection with that bag and making sure that that person remains on board, and there's no screening of that baggage.
To demonstrate what the mayor is talking about, we boarded the 812 train at New Haven's Union Station and placed a black briefcase on the overhead rack. But when we get to Stamford, I get off the train. No one, not my fellow passengers, not the conductor, notices I left without my briefcase. The train continues its trip through Fairfield County, Westchester, into New York City, the briefcase untouched and unnoticed, even when the train arrives at Grand Central. It is only after all the commuters get off that one of our producers takes the briefcase down and removes it from the train. Jim Cameron is chairman of the Metro North Commuter Council.
We've all lulled ourselves into a sense of complacency again. It's been five and a half years since 9/11. And we're just kind of back into our daily routines now. I don't think people are quite as vigilant as they had been in the past about looking for things that look a little suspicious.
But commuters are being told it's their job to be vigilant and look for things a little suspicious. If you see something, say something, says the signs on trains and in train stations.
So, how do you make our commuter rail system safe and secure? There are some 35 train stations around Connecticut, hundreds if not thousands of miles of track, and no one believes you can make train stations as secure as airports.
But Mayor Malloy points out recent terrorist attacks have been on trains in London and Madrid. Several weeks ago, Malloy testified before a Senate committee chaired by Connecticut Senator Christopher Dodd and asked for millions of dollars for surveillance cameras, explosive detection equipment, and training for first responders.
There's no perfect system, but no system is what we have now. We need more training. We need more technology. We need to heighten this issue.
I don't think cameras are necessarily the answer. Cameras are good after something bad has happened to figure out who is involved.
Cameron would like to see more specially trained police officers on trains and more random bag checks. It's the only way, he believes, to possibly stop what we were able to do not once, not twice, but 3 times. Put a briefcase on an overhead rack and walk off the train without anyone noticing.
A Senate committee chaired by Senator Dodd just approved $3.5 billion for new rail security over the next 3 years. But is technology the answer? A new government report says a study into new methods for screening railroad baggage turned out not to be reliable, meaning we continue to rely on people saying something and doing something, which, as you just saw, they don't. Reporting live at Union Station, Alan Coe, News Channel 8.
It was a stormy, contentious school board meeting recorded on shaky video by North Branford Community Access Television in September 2005. The issue was, should the contract of controversial Superintendent Bob Wolf be renewed when a school board member made an incredible claim about academic performance by seniors at North Branford High.
Listen, this school has a 100% graduation rate. No, it was not.
It provoked a strange response from another school board member.
And we won't even go there, Dr. Wolf.
It turns out for years there have been whispers North Branford's perfect graduation rate has been made possible in part because of pressure applied to teachers by parents and the administration to sometimes manipulate grades. And we have uncovered evidence that's what's happened.
Who would actually change the grade in this computer system?
I did. Startling comments to Team 8 from this former employee of the high school guidance department who does not want to be identified. She tells News Channel 8 she was repeatedly ordered to change failing grades to passing, sometimes even after report cards were already printed.
Did this sometimes happen towards the end of the school year where the difference would be graduating and not graduating?
It did happen that way, yes.
While some students could have made up the work, this North Branford teacher says that was not always the case.
Have your colleagues, other teachers, told you that they were pressured to change grades?
Yes.
This teacher, who also doesn't want to be identified in fear of retaliation,
claims at least 2 of his fellow teachers were pressured to change grades.
An individual shared with me that they were asked to adjust the final exam, and the request came from the guidance department.
In fact, in February 2005, the president of the Teachers Union wrote this letter to teachers, acknowledging the problem of grade manipulation. In the letter, Mark Fabrizi says, quote, "If you have had personal experience with this issue, as I have, record the details of your experience."
Some teachers were concerned that they were being pressured by the building administrator to change grades or to pass certain students.
This is the first that I have heard regarding relaxation.
Superintendent Bob Wolf denies ever pressuring teachers to tamper with grades, and he says he has never heard complaints from teachers.
There have been teachers who said that they went to you with this.
No one has ever come to me.
This was one of the issues that the union wanted to address with the superintendent. I do remember having brought it up with the superintendent.
Meanwhile, this from a former school board member.
Did any teacher tell you that they were pressured to change grades?
Yes.
Chris Vanacore heard complaints.
And what did they tell you?
That they were forced into changing grades. It was their job or the grade change.
But until now, no one dared to expose it. And some teachers feel they are paying a collective price for that.
I think teachers should live up to what they're saying in the classroom and come forward and demand that there be an accounting.
That hasn't happened up until now. As for the superintendent, he says that parents can appeal grades right up the chain of command, but he insists he has never overruled administrators at the high school.